A police dog persistently barked at a pregnant woman in the mall, leading to confusion and embarrassment. Initially, the incident was disregarded, and security even asked them to leave. However, hours later, doctors revealed a disturbing realization. If the dog hadn't intervened, the baby wouldn't have survived. The following details the actual sequence of events. Please share in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe, as another compelling Royal Guard story will be released tomorrow at the same time. You won't want to miss it. The fluorescent lights of Seattle's downtown precinct hummed overhead as Officer Deborah Morgan clipped the specialized canine vest onto Max, her Belgian Malinois partner of 3 years. Outside, the October rain painted the city streets in glistening reflections. A persistent rain fell, the sort that residents generally ignored but tourists hurried to avoid. Deborah straightened her uniform collar, verified her gear one last time, and looked at the wall clock. It was 7:15 a.m. 15 minutes until their patrol shift formally started. Prepared for another day ensuring the streets were secure. Partner? She inquired, gently scratching behind Max's attentive ears. The dog's intelligent, amber eyes followed her actions with the focused intensity that had earned him a legendary reputation within the department. His muscular physique remained perfectly still as she fastened the specialized canine unit patches, signifying his status as law enforcement rather than a service animal. The precinct was filled with the regulated disorder of shift change. Night officers completing reports before departing for home, day shift receiving assignments, and coffee being consumed in abundance. Sergeant Wallace stopped as he walked by, giving Max a respectful nod. "Got something interesting for you two today, Morgan," he said, presenting a tablet containing their patrol assignments. A shopping mall had reported some minor shoplifting. Ordinarily, a standard patrol unit would be dispatched, but there had been a string of organized retail thefts in that area. Management specifically asked for our best team. Deborah held back a smile at the subtle compliment. Her 7 years with the canine unit had established a reputation for meticulousness, but it was Max who had genuinely defined their partnership. What started as routine patrol and apprehension training transformed when trainers recognized Max's exceptional sense of smell, especially his capacity to identify blood in quantities so small they occasionally bypassed laboratory analysis. This skill set was first used for identifying injured suspects and finding victims during disaster events. 2 years prior, they were involved in the response following the Highway 18 bridge collapse, where Max located 3 victims trapped under rubble that thermal imaging failed to detect. His remarkable accuracy resulted in specialized training with the Medical Detection Research Program at Pacific Northwest University, where researchers continued to investigate the full scope of his abilities. "Another day, another dollar," Deborah commented, attaching Max's lead to her belt as they proceeded towards the parking garage. The specialized canine unit SUV waited in its designated spot, equipment already inspected and loaded during the previous night's end-of-shift protocol. While driving through Seattle's rain-slicked streets, Max sat attentively in his custom compartment, occasionally observing passing pedestrians before refocusing his gaze ahead. Morning traffic flowed with reluctant efficiency, commuters maneuvering between puddles and construction detours as the wipers maintained a steady rhythm against the windshield. Their radio emitted static before delivering the morning's first dispatch. Unit K93 respond to Westfield Shopping Center, south entrance near Macy's. Loss prevention personnel have detained a shoplifting suspect who has requested police assistance for a formal arrest and a potential link to organized retail theft. K93 is responding, Deborah acknowledged, activating her lights to expedite travel through the busy streets. Estimated time of arrival is roughly 8 minutes. Max noticed a change in her voice, a slight transition to the official tone that invariably indicated they were on duty. As they neared the large Westfield shopping center, neither expected this seemingly ordinary call to challenge their teamwork in unforeseen ways. The south entrance was unusually busy for a Wednesday morning. A local school holiday had drawn numerous families, filling the walkways with strollers and teenagers, even with the ongoing rain. Deborah led Max through the automatic doors, and his training was immediately apparent as he moved through the busy area with precise heel alignment, disregarding the infrequent surprised reactions or pointing from children who noticed the police dog. Security Chief Alvarez greeted them just inside. His neat uniform and professional appearance stood in contrast to the visibly distressed young man in handcuffs sitting on a bench nearby. A small collection of merchandise still bearing security tags was gathered as evidence. "Thank you for coming," Officer Morgan, Alvarez said, extending his hand. "We caught this one attempting to leave with approximately $600 worth of electronics. The store manager wishes to press charges, and we've had 3 comparable incidents this month." Deborah nodded, already assessing the surroundings while maintaining a relaxed but firm hold on Max's lead. "We will collect his information and transport him back to the precinct for processing. Are there any witnesses we should speak with?" Alvarez indicated a small group of people waiting close to the security office: a store employee, an elderly man using a cane, and a visibly pregnant woman wearing a blue maternity dress, appearing to be approximately 7 months pregnant. The woman in blue, Emily Thompson, had observed him removing security tags in the electronics department. She was the individual who notified our team. Deborah moved toward the witnesses, with Max moving smoothly alongside her. Gathering statements had become a familiar process for her during her time on the force. Build rapport, collect information in chronological order, address any discrepancies, and thank individuals for their civic duty. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Officer Morgan. I understand you observed the shoplifting incident. I would like to obtain your statement if you—" Max's actions shifted so abruptly that Deborah nearly lost her hold. The Belgian Malinois froze, his nose working intensely, his focus entirely on Emily Thompson. Before Deborah could give a correction, Max emitted 3 distinct barks, not the usual alert bark used in training, but a more pressing, more demanding sound. "Max, quiet," Deborah stated firmly, a blush rising on her cheeks as people turned to look throughout the mall entrance. The dog disregarded her entirely, an unprecedented action in their 3 years together. He edged closer to the pregnant woman, his barks growing louder. Emily Thompson moved backward, her hand moving to shield her belly. "What's wrong with him? Is he dangerous?" she asked, her voice filled with worry as she stepped away. "I'm so sorry," Deborah said, positioning herself between Max and the woman. "He's extremely well trained. This behavior is completely out of character." Security Chief Alvarez advanced, his demeanor shifting from professional to concerned. "Officer Morgan, perhaps you should remove your dog from the premises. We have other witnesses who can provide statements." Max continued to strain toward Emily, whining now between barks, his entire body communicating urgency that Deborah couldn't understand. A small group had assembled, with phones out to capture what was happening. The department certainly didn't need a viral video showing a police dog seemingly intimidating a pregnant woman. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Deborah asked Emily, still working to keep Max under control. "Did he frighten you?" Emily's hand stayed protectively on her abdomen. "I'm fine, just startled. Perhaps he's responding to something different." The baby kicked precisely as he began barking.
"Deborah commanded. Max, settle."
Deborah spoke with greater authority, eventually succeeding in drawing him back a few steps, even though his gaze remained focused on Emily's midsection. His actions were raising concerns for Deborah. This wasn't a display of aggression or a lack of training. It appeared Max was attempting to urgently convey a particular message. "Mrs. Thompson, this may seem unusual, but are you having any medical concerns related to your pregnancy? Any pain or discomfort whatsoever?" Emily appeared surprised by the inquiry. "Just the typical backache and some pressure, nothing unexpected for 7 months." "Why are you asking?" Alvarez's patience was obviously dwindling. "Officer, we have a retail theft suspect in custody and witnesses waiting. If your canine is unable to maintain appropriate behavior, we should proceed with this process without him." Deborah nodded reluctantly, feeling conflicted between her professional duties and the persistent feeling that Max's behavior needed to be addressed. Throughout the 3 years they'd collaborated, he had never been incorrect when alerting with such urgency. "I understand. Mrs. Thompson, I apologize for the interruption. If you are willing to proceed, I'd like to swiftly record your statement so you can leave." As Emily began describing what she'd observed in the electronics department, Max finally sat at Deborah's direction. He kept his gaze fixed on the pregnant woman, his muscles visibly trembling as he fought against whatever his instincts urged him to do. Again, I sincerely apologize for Max's behavior, Deborah said, concluding Emily's statement, her voice remaining professional despite the lingering embarrassment she felt. The pregnant woman had provided detailed information about the shoplifter's actions, but throughout the entire conversation, Max had remained focused on her, whining softly despite Deborah's quiet corrections. It's really fine, Emily insisted, though she kept a cautious distance from the Belgian Malinois. Animals sometimes react unusually around pregnant women. My sister's cat wouldn't leave her alone during her third trimester. Security Chief Alvarez expressed his displeasure, frequently glancing at his watch. Officer Morgan, we must process the suspect and resume regular operations at this entrance. This incident is causing considerable disruption, he stated. Deborah nodded in agreement, pausing briefly before closing her notebook. Mrs. Thompson, would you be willing to have the mall's first aid responder assess your vitals prior to your departure? This is simply a precaution. Max is specially trained in medical detection, and his actions indicate he's alerting to something. Emily's husband, Mark Thompson, a tall man in a business suit, has now joined them. Is that truly necessary? We are already running behind schedule for her prenatal appointment this afternoon. It would only take a minute, Deborah urged calmly. Max has a recorded history of identifying medical concerns prior to human recognition. Mark noticed a touch of worry in Deborah's tone. He thought it likely wouldn't be a problem. Emily had experienced more backaches than usual today. The mall's first aid responder, Rodriguez, who previously worked as an EMT, arrived quickly with a medical kit. His brief examination showed no immediate issues. Emily's blood pressure was a little high, but remained within the expected range for pregnancy. Her pulse was steady, and she indicated no unusual symptoms beyond the normal discomfort of the third trimester. Everything appeared normal, Rodriguez concluded, as he packed away his stethoscope. Blood pressure was slightly elevated, but that's typical after standing and giving police statements. I suggest resting before your doctor's appointment this afternoon. Mark assisted Emily to her feet, his arms providing support around her waist. There, you see? Nothing to worry about. Your dog likely just smelled something else. Deborah nodded, although she noticed Max's continued alertness. We appreciate your understanding. Please don't hesitate to seek medical care if you notice any changes before your scheduled appointment. As the Thompsons walked away in the direction of the mall's north parking structure, Max pulled on his lead, emitting another whine that caused Deborah's stomach to clench with concern. Officer Morgan, Alvarez's voice interrupted her thoughts. We need to finish processing our suspect, and honestly, I'll have to create an incident report regarding your K-9's conduct. Mall management prioritizes all potential safety concerns, Deborah responded, her frustration hidden by her professional demeanor. Max has not exhibited this behavior previously. He holds certifications in several detection specialties and has a flawless training history. Despite this, his actions caused a disruption and caused alarm for a pregnant woman. This is an issue that cannot be disregarded. Deborah finished the required forms for the shoplifting suspect, coordinating for a patrol unit to convey him to the precinct for booking. During this time, Max appeared remarkably apprehensive, his focus frequently returning to the path the Thompsons had taken, even after they were no longer visible. When they ultimately reached their vehicle, Deborah began to question her partnership. Had she misinterpreted Max's actions? Could there have been a gap in their training that accounted for this awkward situation? The upcoming incident report would necessitate a formal reply and potentially a review of Max's certification, a bureaucratic ordeal that could affect their standing in the K-9 unit. What were you attempting to communicate to me, boy? She inquired softly. As they drove away from the mall, Max's eyes remained focused on the structure they were leaving behind. Over the years, she had come to trust his instincts without question. His abilities had located individuals when technology faltered and uncovered evidence that human investigators overlooked. However, today, his conduct had appeared erratic, lacking professionalism, and potentially harmful to their reputation. Despite this, as they drove back to the precinct, Deborah felt a persistent unease that Max had been attempting to convey something significant, something that everyone, including herself, had disregarded prematurely. The autumn rain grew stronger as Deborah guided their vehicle into the precinct's K-9-unit parking area. Her thoughts returned to the initial time she encountered Max 3 years previously at the regional training facility in eastern Washington. She was recuperating from a shoulder injury, which she had gotten during a chase, an event that made her reconsider her career in patrol. The K-9 division appeared to be an ideal change, blending her law enforcement background with her long-held love of working dogs. Max remained calmly still in his kennel, while other dogs barked and jumped energetically as potential handlers passed by. A certain quality in his concentrated, focused gaze had established a connection with her instantly, an intelligence that appeared to examine her as completely as she was assessing him. He's had 3 handlers already, the kennel master had informed her. Too intense, they'd said. Too focused on blood tracking to the exclusion of other training. Great nose, but they couldn't direct it appropriately. She knelt before his kennel, and Max approached the gate with dignified curiosity, unlike the frenetic energy of the other candidates. He's not washing out, she said with certainty. He's just waiting for someone who understands him. Their first 6 months together had been challenging. Max's extraordinary olfactory abilities sometimes overwhelmed his other training objectives. Although many police dogs receive training to identify various odors, such as narcotics or explosives, Max exhibited an exceptional and almost uncanny ability to detect blood. He was able to identify incredibly small traces that occasionally bypassed crime scene technicians, precisely locating their position with a disturbing accuracy. This remarkable talent significantly impacted their collaboration during a standard missing persons case their first year together. A 6-year-old boy had disappeared during a family hiking trip in the Cascade foothills. Standard search patterns had yielded nothing, and after 36 hours, hope was fading. Deborah had given Max one of the boy's t-shirts, expecting him to track the general scent trail. Instead, Max had detected microscopic blood traces from a small scrape the child had sustained before going missing. The blood was so minimal the parents hadn't even realized their son was injured. Following this nearly invisible trail, Max guided rescuers to an abandoned mining shaft, the location where the boy had fallen and become trapped. Medical personnel subsequently confirmed that without Max's exceptional detection abilities, they would not have found the child in time. Their most significant case occurred during the Highway 18 bridge collapse. Amid the chaos of broken concrete and twisted rebar, Max systematically located survivors by detecting blood through layers of debris. A notable example occurred when he firmly advocated for a specific area of collapsed roadway, even though thermal imaging revealed no heat signatures. Rescue personnel subsequently located a young woman experiencing hypothermia. Her core temperature was so low that sensors failed to register it. However, Max identified microscopic blood originating from her internal injuries, perceiving it through 20 feet of concrete. Following the incident, researchers from Pacific Northwest University's medical detection program contacted the department regarding a study of Max's abilities. Subsequent, controlled tests validated what Deborah already knew. Max could detect blood at concentrations as low as a few parts per billion, and even more remarkably, he could differentiate between various types of bleeding, appearing to prioritize based on the severity or source of the blood. Dr. Eleanor Patel, the program's lead researcher, had been especially intrigued by Max's seeming ability to detect internal bleeding that presented with no external signs. He's not simply smelling the blood, she explained to Deborah during one testing session. He's detecting these specific biomarkers released when certain tissues are damaged. It's as if he possesses a portable medical laboratory in his nose. This training was integrated into their standard certification process, with Max's capabilities detailed in peer-reviewed research articles and specialized law enforcement journals. His detection skills had identified gunshot victims concealed within buildings, determined internal injuries in car accident victims who presented without visible trauma, and even alerted to a brain aneurysm in a colleague during a routine training exercise. Despite this, those remarkable talents had been disregarded by all, even herself, when Max had concentrated on Emily Thompson. Now, sitting in the parking lot, rain beating on the roof of their car, Deborah resolved to act. Max had never been mistaken when expressing that degree of concern, not once in 3 years. She retrieved her phone and searched for Emily Thompson, Seattle. A social media profile surfaced instantly. The woman from the mall, whose profile picture showed her smiling next to her husband, appeared pregnant to a lesser extent in the image. Her listed previous employment was Thompson & Associates Legal Services. Deborah paused for only a moment before entering the address into her GPS. Max had relied on her judgment repeatedly throughout their partnership. It might be the right time to reciprocate that trust fully, even if it carried the risk of an official warning. The Bellevue Heights apartments presented a sharp difference from the nearby area, a contemporary high-rise with expansive windows reflecting the overcast sky. Deborah had changed into regular clothing, keeping her badge safely tucked in her jacket pocket. Max was in the passenger seat, his work vest off, but his specialized training collar still fastened. "This is likely nothing," Deborah said to him as they waited parked near the building entrance. "Should I be incorrect, this unsanctioned follow-up investigation could jeopardize both our professional lives." Max's unwavering look suggested unwavering confidence, his posture rigid with the same readiness he exhibited at the mall. When Emily Thompson's blue SUV entered the building's underground parking area, his response was instant, a quiet signal and movement forward that Deborah had come to recognize as unwavering belief. "All right, colleague," she said, starting her engine, "but we will proceed cautiously." The building's concierge halted them at the lobby entrance, observing Max with professional concern. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but pets aren't allowed in the common areas without prior arrangement." Deborah presented her badge, maintaining a conversational tone rather than an authoritative one. "I'm Officer Morgan, Seattle PD. I'm following up on an incident report involving one of your residents, Emily Thompson. It will only take a few minutes." The concierge paused, then placed a brief call that seemed to resolve any issues. 18th floor, apartment 1802. "I will inform Mr. Thompson that you are coming up." The elevator journey provided Deborah time to reevaluate her decision once more. She possessed no legitimate reason for her presence here, nor a case number to justify the follow-up. Should the Thompsons lodge a complaint about harassment, she would lack departmental protection. Despite Max's persistent focus, that characteristic intensity which had previously saved lives, it reinforced her determination. Mark Thompson opened the door, having removed his earlier business attire and opting for more relaxed clothing. His face shifted from polite curiosity to recognition and then to exhaustion. "Officer Morgan, is there an issue with Emily's statement?" "No, there wasn't," Deborah confirmed. "I wanted to discuss what happened this morning in person. My canine partner exhibited atypical behavior, and in my experience, that necessitates a reevaluation." She indicated Max, who stood attentively nearby. "I assure you he is entirely safe and remarkably well-trained." Mark's stance remained cautious, but he moved to allow passage. "Emily is currently at rest. She has reported increased discomfort this afternoon, but the physician states that is expected at 30 weeks. The apartment was spacious and tastefully furnished, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows that provided a panoramic view of Lake Washington. Emily reclined on a sectional sofa, appearing more fatigued than she had earlier that morning. A throw blanket covered her legs, even though the apartment was warm. "Officer Morgan?" Emily's surprise was clear as she attempted to sit up straighter. She asked, "Is something wrong with my witness statement?" Max's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His body tightened, his nose working quickly as he focused intently on Emily, mirroring the focus he's displayed at the mall, but now with heightened urgency. "I apologize for this unusual visit," Deborah began, keeping a firm grip on Max's lead. "But I wanted to check on you." Max is specially trained in medical detection, and his behavior this morning indicated he detected something concerning. Emily's hand moved protectively over her abdomen. The mall first aid person reported everything was fine. Deborah conceded that it was likely. However, Max had a proven ability to identify medical concerns prior to the onset of typical signs. He had been involved in medical research projects at Pacific Northwest University, consistently demonstrating a flawless record of detection accuracy. Mark approached his wife, his posture revealing a cautious disbelief. "You're implying your dog possesses knowledge regarding my wife's health that her obstetrician lacks?" Deborah selected her subsequent phrasing with deliberation. "Max possesses specialized training in blood detection, enabling him to identify internal bleeding prior to the emergence of external symptoms. He has located disaster victims beneath rubble by detecting microscopic blood traces through 20 feet of concrete. Emily shifted uncomfortably on the sofa, wincing slightly. "I've just been having some back pain and pressure," she said. "The doctor said it's normal, especially since I've been on my feet more than usual today." Max abruptly accelerated with such resolve that Deborah had to steady herself. Rather than barking, he whimpered anxiously, employing the sound he reserved for search and rescue missions when he'd found a seriously hurt individual. "When is your doctor's appointment?" Deborah inquired, her worry increasing as she noticed Emily's paleness and the slight tremor in her hands. "Not until 4, Mark replied, glancing at his watch. "About an hour from now." Deborah made a decision that could end her career if she was wrong. "Mr. Thompson, I strongly recommend you take your wife to the hospital now. Not in an hour. Right now." The assessment was based on your dog's behavior. Mark's incredulity was unmistakable. "That seems..." Mark started, but was interrupted. "It hurts," Emily said. Her voice had changed, fear edging into her tone as she pressed both hands against her abdomen. "It's getting worse, not better, and I feel dizzy when I stand up." Deborah quietly stated that those could be symptoms of placental abruption, referencing her emergency response training and the potential for internal bleeding that conventional examinations might miss in early stages. Emily's face grew even paler. "My sister experienced that with her second baby. The doctor had mentioned that I have some risk factors." Mark's skepticism vanished immediately, seeing the fear in his wife's voice. "I'll get the car," he said. Deborah countered, "I think we should call an ambulance," already reaching for her phone. If Max's observations are accurate, each minute is crucial. While she contacted 911, requesting urgent medical assistance for a potential obstetric emergency, Deborah observed Max continuing his intense monitoring of Emily. The expression in his amber eyes was familiar to her, drawn from their most vital search missions, the unwavering conviction that had guided rescuers to survivors whom others considered lost. The sound of the approaching ambulance broke through the usual sounds of the affluent neighborhood. Mark knelt beside Emily, his previous doubts gone, replaced by clear worry as he held her hand. Her condition worsened quickly in the 12 minutes since Deborah had made the call, her skin now damp, her breathing faint. "The ambulance is nearly here," Deborah told them, having ensured the paramedics could reach the apartment. Max stayed exactly where he was next to her, his vigilance unchanged, but his actions were now restrained and professional. The paramedics arrived with skill deficiency, 2 experienced emergency responders who didn't pause for greetings as they started their evaluation. They functioned with the coordinated accuracy developed over years of collaboration, one starting intravenous access while the other observed vital signs and asked pointed questions regarding the pregnancy. At 30 weeks pregnant, Emily reported increased pain and pressure today, along with dizziness when standing, as the lead paramedic worked. "Any vaginal bleeding?" he asked. "No," Emily answered, her voice weak. "Just the pain and feeling faint. It's been getting worse all day." Deborah approached. "My canine partner, Max, is specifically trained in blood detection. His behavior suggests possible internal bleeding, potentially a placental abruption." The paramedic glanced at Max, then back to Deborah, recognition dawning. Were Morgan and Max involved in the bridge collapse, the team responsible for locating the hypothermic victim? "Yes," Deborah verified, feeling a wave of relief knowing she wouldn't have to explain the atypical medical warning. The paramedic acknowledged, immediately modifying his plan. "Possible concealed abruption? Let's proceed now. Establish a wide-open 4 and prepare for obstetrical trauma at Harbor Medical." To Mark, he added, "We're transporting your wife to Harbor instead of Seattle General. This facility boasts the region's leading high-risk obstetrics team." Emily was moved to the stretcher with careful urgency. Her condition was deteriorating as her body attempted to counteract the blood loss, a detail only Max was able to discern. The paramedics permitted Mark to accompany them in the ambulance. Before the doors closed, the lead paramedic addressed Deborah. "Are you coming? If your K-9 detected anything our equipment isn't showing, the doctors will want to know precisely how he alerted." Deborah acknowledged, trailing behind in her car with Max secured in his compartment. The ambulance navigated the traffic at a measured pace, its lights and sirens clearing a path through the crowded roadways as it proceeded to the waterfront hospital complex. During the journey, Deborah's police radio transmitted an urgent notification from the ambulance. Patient becoming unresponsive, BP declining, potential obstetric hemorrhage underway, estimated time of arrival at Harbor Medical, for minutes. Deborah gripped the steering wheel, keeping pace with the ambulance. Max, unable to decipher the radio communication, noticed the shift in her stance and whimpered gently from his space. "Good boy," she said. "You were right. You knew when nobody else did." Harbor Medical's emergency entrance was already ready upon their arrival. A trauma team stood by, prepared with equipment for both Emily and the baby. Deborah observed the transfer of Emily from the ambulance, the medical personnel moving with the focused urgency characteristic of serious incidents. A tall woman in surgical scrubs approached as Emily was wheeled into the hospital, questioning the paramedics before addressing Deborah. "I'm Dr. Keisha Williams, obstetrical trauma," she stated. "They tell me your K9 detected this before conventional symptoms appeared?" Deborah confirmed. "Yes, Max is specialized in blood detection. He exhibited significant concern regarding Mrs. Thompson around 9:30 a.m. this morning, followed by heightened alarm when we examined her at her apartment around 2:45 p.m. Dr. Williams appeared contemplative, not dismissive. The first ultrasound does not reveal a clear placental abruption, but her declining blood pressure and other symptoms indicate a possible internal hemorrhage. Could your dog's behavior assist us in pinpointing the source of the bleeding?" Deborah confirmed his capability, expressing surprise but appreciating the doctor's candor. "He is trained to identify the most potent origin of the smell." The doctor then decided to bring him in, stating, "We are preparing for emergency surgery, but if your dog can provide us with any further details regarding the site of the bleeding, it could save valuable time." Deborah guided Max through the emergency department, disregarding the surprised glances from his staff as they entered the trauma bay, where Emily was now encircled by medical equipment. The monitoring devices indicated her heart rate was elevated, and her blood pressure was dangerously low, even with fluids being administered through 2 IVs. "Emily, we're going to perform an emergency cesarean," Dr. Williams was explaining. "The baby is showing signs of distress, and your condition is deteriorating." Rapid action was essential. Max proceeded with impeccable control as Deborah positioned him nearer the bed. His nose systematically scanned across Emily's body before he settled quickly, placing his paw deliberately and steadily on the upper right quadrant of her abdomen, a trained signal indicating the most concentrated source of the scent he was following. "Upper right quadrant," Dr. Williams observed. "Possible right-sided placental abruption with retroplacental bleeding. Let's move her 2 or 3 now, prepare for a possible DIC protocol, and have the neonatal team on standby for premature delivery." As they wheeled Emily toward the operating room, she reached out weakly toward Deborah and Max. "Thank you," she whispered. Mark stood still for a moment as his wife was rushed away, medical terminology passing around him too quickly to understand. Then he turned to Deborah, his face pale. "The doctor stated, if we had waited until our scheduled appointment, it would have been—" He was unable to complete the sentence. "Your wife is in good hands," Deborah reassured him, despite the seriousness of the situation being clear in the controlled disarray surrounding them. Harbor Medical possesses an exceptional trauma team. A nurse came forward to direct Mark to the surgical waiting area, noting that the procedure would probably take a minimum of 1 hour. He paused briefly to kneel beside Max before going with her. "I didn't believe," he stated quietly, his voice heavy with feeling. "But you knew. How did you know when no one else could discern it?" Deborah wished she could offer a less complicated explanation than the intricate mix of genetics, training, and the unexplainable connection between Handler and Canine that had previously saved lives. "He's special," she replied, "and he's never wrong when he alerts like that." The surgical waiting room possessed the characteristic stillness often found in hospitals, a place where time appeared to hang between hope and worry. Mark Thompson walked back and forth across the room, pausing sometimes to look out the rain-streaked windows at the harbor below, then continuing his steady steps. Deborah remained still in the corner, Max settled at her feet, yet watchful. his training enabling him to stay composed within the medical setting despite likely detecting stress from the humans nearby. "You don't need to remain," Mark stated abruptly, ending the silence that had lasted almost 30 minutes. "You've already exceeded your required responsibilities." Deborah responded, "I'd like to observe this conclusion, unless you desire solitude." Mark shook his head, returning to the molded plastic chair beside her. "No, you and Max are the reason we're here in time." He paused. "They're not just empty words when I say Emily and the baby would—" He swallowed hard, unable to complete the thought. The surgical liaison nurse had updated them once, 20 minutes into the procedure, with the measured optimism that medical professionals cultivate. Emily was stable, the surgery progressing, more information would come when available. The carefully neutral phrasing had done little to ease the tension visible on Mark's face. "Can I ask," he began after another pause, "how did your partner know?" "The doctors performed tests this morning during her routine checkup and found no cause for concern." Deborah paused, contemplating how to explain something that medical researchers were still investigating. "Max's sense of smell is approximately 40 times more powerful than ours, but it's more than just sensitivity. He had received specialized training to detect blood in quantities undetectable by standard testing. Crucially, he could distinguish between normal blood presence and unusual bleeding patterns. However, Mark pointed out there was no visible blood. Even now, the doctor explained, it was a concealed abruption. The blood didn't need to be visible to him. The body releases specific biomarkers when internal bleeding occurs. Tiny alterations in blood chemistry, undetectable through skin, breath, or even clothing, don't escape Max's awareness." Their conversation was paused as the door opened, showing Dr. Williams still wearing surgical scrubs, her expression carefully neutral, yet subtly conveying the relief that accompanied good news. "Mr. Thompson," she started, sitting in the chair opposite them, "your wife is stable now. An emergency cesarean delivery was performed, and we are currently treating the placental abruption that caused significant internal bleeding." "And the baby?" Mark asked, his voice quiet. "Your daughter is in neonatal intensive care. She is premature at 30 weeks, but is breathing independently with supplemental oxygen. Her vital signs are stable, which is notable given the situation." The visible strain lessened from Mark's body, although worry remained on his face. "Is it possible for me to see them?" "Emily is recovering now. She can be seen briefly in approximately 20 minutes. The baby will remain in the NICU, but you may visit her as well once Emily is settled." Dr. Williams then focused on Deborah and Max. "Officer Morgan, I wish to thank you and your partner for your actions. The surgical team verified a concealed placental abruption precisely where your dog indicated." "How critical was it?" Deborah inquired softly. The doctor's formal composure eased a bit. "Throughout my 15 years practicing obstetrical medicine, I have seldom observed a concealed abruption advance to such a degree without noticeable external signs. Had Mrs. Thompson arrived at her scheduled appointment, both she and the baby would likely have been in critical condition, potentially past the point where we could have provided effective intervention." Mark covered his face with his hands, the full weight of how near they had come to a tragic outcome finally registering with him. Dr. Williams added, "It's quite notable that your dog identified this issue at the mall earlier today, prior to Mrs. Thompson showing any noticeable signs. The pathology report indicates the abruption was in its initial stages then. There was microscopic bleeding that wouldn't have been picked up by standard screening methods. This aligns with his training, as Deborah clarified. Max located faint traces of blood, several hours old and too minimal for crime scene technicians to identify without specialized chemical analysis. Fortunately, his abilities helped save 2 lives today." Dr. Williams observed, consulting her pager. "The obstetrics department would be keen to learn more about the canine program. They are continuously searching for improved techniques for early detection of pregnancy complications." After the doctor departed, Mark remained silent for several minutes, processing everything. Finally, he turned to Deborah. "I dismissed him completely this morning. I thought it was just an untrained animal making a scene," he said. "Most people would have reacted the same way," Deborah assured him. "That's why I came to your apartment, despite having no official reason to follow up. I've learned to trust Max's alerts, even when they seem improbable." How did this happen without anyone noticing? Mark asked. The inquiry seemed aimed more at himself than at Deborah. Emily had a checkup just last week. All results were normal. Dr. Williams noted it was concealed. The bleeding was situated behind the placenta, not externally. Such instances are notably dangerous as they frequently lack symptoms until they reach a critical state. The liaison nurse reappeared, letting them know Emily had been moved to recovery and Mark could visit briefly. He stood up, then paused. Would you and Max join as well? For just a moment, I believe Emily would like to express her gratitude to both of you. The recovery room was softly lit and peaceful, except for the consistent beeping of the medical devices. Emily was positioned a little upright, her skin still fair, but without the bluish tinge of severe blood loss. Her eyes lit up upon seeing Mark, and then grew wide with surprise as Deborah and Max entered behind him. You remained, she said faintly, reaching out her hand. Thank you doesn't seem sufficient. Deborah moved closer to the bed, Max keeping his heels firmly planted. I'm just glad we followed up, she said. How are you feeling? Emily responded with a faint smile, like I've been hit by a truck. She added, but they say both I and Charlotte are going to be okay. Charlotte? Deborah inquired. Mark confirmed. Charlotte Morgan Thompson. We just decided on the middle name. It seemed appropriate to name her partly after the officer who saved her life, he said, his voice catching slightly. Deborah experienced a sudden emotion that constricted her throat. That's quite an honor, but Max deserves the recognition. He was the one who recognized something was amiss. Emily's eyes moved towards the Belgian Malinois, who was sitting attentively by Deborah. The doctor explained the situation, stating that Deborah had a concealed placental abruption that wouldn't have presented symptoms until it was too late. Your dog detected it hours before any medical equipment could have. Deborah explained that his nose can detect blood in concentrations as low as a few parts per billion. The research team at Pacific Northwest University continues to try and understand exactly how he distinguishes between normal blood presence and abnormal bleeding patterns. Well, whatever he sensed, Emily said, he knew before anyone else that something was seriously wrong. The doctor said, by the time we reached my scheduled appointment, she trailed off, her hand tightening around Mark's. Focusing on the encouraging aspects, the nurse interjected gently. Your daughter is progressing remarkably well, considering she was born at 30 weeks. You will be able to visit her in the NICU after you have had a little more rest. As preparations were made for Emily to get the rest she needed, Max did something unexpected. He moved a little closer, his nose softly touching Emily's hand where it lay on the blanket. The brief touch ended as he resumed his place next to Deborah, yet it brought tears to Emily's eyes. It's almost as if he knows, she murmured. Deborah affirmed with a nod, her own throat constricted with feeling. I believe he does. The neonatal intensive care unit functioned according to a unique cadence, separate from the regulated disorder of the emergency department below. Quiet tones and delicate actions fostered an environment of meticulous accuracy. While medical staff cared for the unit's small patients, 3 days elapsed since the emergency surgery. Deborah stood outside the glass-walled room, watching as Emily sat beside the incubator holding her daughter. Charlotte Morgan Thompson, born 8 weeks premature and weighing just over 3 pounds, had surpassed initial medical expectations. Despite needing continued oxygen and feeding support, she demonstrated significant strength, a quality neonatal specialist linked to the swift action that had avoided extended oxygen deficiency. She has your fighting spirit, Deborah overheard Mark say to his wife as the sliding door opened to allow another visitor. Dr. Williams came forward, holding a clipboard, her usual professional appearance relaxed by a sincere smile as she addressed the new parents. Deborah had initially intended to leave, feeling she shouldn't interrupt their private medical conversation. However, before she could depart, Mark noticed her through the window and gestured for her to join them, showing that her presence was appreciated. Officer Morgan, Dr. Williams acknowledged as Deborah entered. I was just reviewing Charlotte's progress with the Thompsons. She's exceeding our expectations for a 30-week delivery following placental abruption. Emily looked up from the incubator, her smile showing exhaustion. The transfusions and emergency surgery had taken their toll, but the medical team had assured her that with time, she would recover completely. We were just discussing arranging for Max to meet her formally once she regains some strength. The NICU supervisor has approved this as an exception. He would appreciate that, Deborah responded, feeling moved by the action. He is currently situated in the K-9 unit vehicle. Department guidelines prohibit him from entering medical facilities without explicit permission. Dr. Williams recorded a note on her clipboard. I have issued that authorization, effective immediately. I have discussed with the hospital administrator the possibility of creating a pilot program involving your K-9 unit for high-risk obstetric screenings. Your partner's capabilities could potentially transform how we identify early pregnancy complications. This idea wasn't completely surprising. Max's exceptional detection skills have previously drawn attention from the medical field, but using them in obstetrics presents a promising new area of exploration. Deborah considered the research potential involving other pregnant women, focusing on complications that could be identified before they escalated into life-threatening emergencies. She volunteered to discuss the idea with her superiors, noting that the department already had established protocols for specialized deployments in medical settings. Mark stood beside his wife, his hand gently resting on the incubator holding their daughter. I found it difficult to accept Dr. Williams' explanation of Emily's condition. The placenta had started to detach from the uterine wall that morning, coinciding with the moment your dog first alerted at the mall. The doctor detailed that the bleeding was entirely internal, adopting a clinical and precise tone. She clarified that standard screening methods would not have identified the issue at that stage. When Emily arrived at the hospital, approximately 20% of her blood volume had been lost into the concealed space behind the placenta. If the condition had advanced another 2 to 3 hours, the potential consequences would likely have been severe. Emily reached through the incubator's access port to gently touch her daughter's tiny hand. The NICU doctor explained that babies born following placental abruption frequently experience complications related to oxygen deprivation. However, Charlotte's test results are all normal. Dr. Williams clarified that we were able to deliver her because the placental separation hadn't advanced to the point where it would have jeopardized her oxygen supply. Typically, in situations like this, patients don't receive medical attention until they display significant symptoms, and the fetus has frequently been in distress for hours. A sense of the potential severity of the situation lingered briefly before Mark spoke. Hospital leadership inquired about our willingness to contribute to a case study for their medical journal. The focus would be on documenting an instance where a police canine identified a critical medical condition prior to the detection by conventional medical technology. I believe this is an excellent proposition, Deborah stated. Max's abilities warrant greater awareness within the medical field. There could be other potential uses we haven't yet explored. A soft chime from Dr. Williams's pager interrupted the discussion. Having reviewed the message, she stepped away to care for another patient, stating she would return to talk about Charlotte's feeding progress. Once she left, Emily took Deborah's hand. I can't help but think about how things might have turned out differently, Emily said. If you hadn't relied on Max to follow up, he's the one who should be recognized, Deborah replied. I nearly dismissed him myself. Were it not for our shared past, and the numerous occasions his instincts proved accurate even when they appeared unlikely, I might have considered his actions an unusual occurrence. Will you incur any repercussions for observing us without proper authorization? Mark inquired, his voice filled with worry. Deborah replied with a smile. Actually, the opposite is true. After the department became aware of the situation, they've provided complete backing. The possibility of favorable media coverage and the potential for advancements in medical research have transformed what might have been a routine matter into what my sergeant described as a public relations opportunity. Observing through the glass wall of the NICU, she noticed other small infants in their incubators, all supported by the equipment intended to maximize their chances of survival. She wondered how many of their mothers might have gained from earlier identification of complications. What number of future cases might be identified sooner? Ideally, if Max's abilities could be consistently used in medical screening. Would you and Max consider being Charlotte's godparents? Emily asked abruptly, the question surprising Deborah completely. I know it's unusual, But then so is having your life saved by a police dog with a supernatural nose. The unexpected offer moved Deborah profoundly. Throughout her career in law enforcement, she had rescued individuals and impacted numerous cases. Yet this situation felt distinct, more intimate, and deeper in significance. "We would be honored," she replied concisely, recognizing that this case had altered not only the Thompsons' lives but also her own understanding of her collaboration with Max. She had always been impressed by his exceptional skills, but now she realized that relying on those abilities could go beyond standard work rules and processes when something truly critical was involved. As she departed the NICU to get Max from the car, Deborah considered the connection that had led her to trust her colleague's judgment, even though every reasonable consideration suggested otherwise. Certain bonds transcended typical understanding, be it between a mother and child, a handler and dog, or the unusual capacity of a dog to perceive what advanced medical equipment missed until the situation was critical. The winter sun stretched shadows across the main entrance of Harbor Medical Center as Deborah led Max through the automatic doors. While they had been visiting weekly throughout Emily's lengthy recovery, today held a significant moment: Charlotte's formal release following 31 days in neonatal intensive care. The Belgian Malinois moved with impeccable discipline despite the excitement visible in his attentive stance. He had adjusted surprisingly well to the hospital setting during their earlier visits, preserving his professional attitude even as staff paused to appreciate him. He chose a specialized therapy dog designation, temporarily granted for this visit, instead of his usual working vest. The Thompson family was located in the NICU family room, where balloons and a small group of medical staff who had cared for Charlotte during her first month were gathered. The premature infant, who had previously appeared impossibly tiny, now weighed nearly 5 pounds. Her improved condition was clear in her more alert gaze and stronger movements. Emily, as mandated by hospital policy for discharge, remained in a wheelchair despite her physical recovery from surgery. A smile spread across her face when she noticed Deborah and Max entering. "The guests of honor," she announced, prompting the assembled medical team to turn. "Everyone, this is Officer Deborah Morgan and K-9 Officer Max, the team that saved both our lives." Dr. Williams approached. Perfect timing. "We were just about to have a small celebration before discharge. Charlotte has surpassed all developmental milestones." Mark came forward, gently holding his daughter. The change in him was striking. He had previously questioned Max's methods, but now he knelt with care to position his daughter at eye level with the Belgian Malinois. "Charlotte," he spoke quietly, even though the baby was too young to comprehend, "this is Max. He's the reason you and your mom are both here today." Max stayed completely still, his training enabling him to evaluate the little human without any actions that could be perceived as threatening. Following a brief period of careful observation, he performed an action that moved Deborah to tears. He slowly lowered his head in a gesture of remarkable tenderness, his nose delicately sniffing the baby's blanket before he returned to his poised sitting posture. "He remembers," Emily said softly. "Somehow he understands who she is." A representative from Pacific Northwest University's Medical Detection Program, Dr. Patel, was present for this important event. For the past month, she had held several sessions analyzing Max's capabilities, integrating the insights from Charlotte's case into her continuous research. Dr. Patel explained to the assembled medical personnel that the truly notable aspect wasn't solely his ability to identify the abruption prior to the onset of typical symptoms, but also his ability to distinguish it from standard pregnancy blood markers. His nose detected the precise biomarkers indicative of placental separation, a capability beyond the scope of our present screening procedures. A NICU nurse who had been involved in Charlotte's care from her initial arrival expressed astonishment. "In 23 years of neonatal nursing, I have encountered numerous placental abruption cases. The results are seldom this favorable, particularly with concealed abruptions, where diagnosis usually occurs only after pronounced symptoms manifest. That's why we are implementing the pilot program next month," Dr. Williams added. "Officer Morgan and Max will visit our high-risk pregnancy clinic twice weekly to screen patients. We are developing a research protocol to document and analyze his alerts." Emily reached out to stroke Max's head, a gesture the disciplined canine accepted with dignified patience. "We've been told that many women with my condition don't reach the hospital in time," she said quietly. Without immediate intervention, both mother and baby often, she didn't need to complete the thought. Everyone in the room understood the seriousness of what had nearly happened and what Max's extraordinary abilities had prevented. Mark carefully returned Charlotte to Emily's arms, the baby now sleeping peacefully, unaware of her medical journey or the significance of this day. "We wanted to give you something," he said to Deborah, retrieving a small package from beside the wheelchair. "While it may seem modest in comparison to your previous generosity, we wished for you to receive this." Within the securely packaged box was a framed photograph depicting Charlotte and her incubator, showcasing her small hand clasped around Emily's finger. Accompanying it, a silver, badge-shaped medallion bore the inscription Canine Hero, Max, along with Charlotte's birth date. "The department already presented us with formal recognition last week," Deborah remarked, moved by this thoughtful personal touch. Emily clarified that this wasn't about formal acknowledgement. "It was a gift from our family to yours, as you and Max have become to us." While they made arrangements to depart the hospital, Charlotte was safely secured in her car seat. With medical staff providing concluding directions, Deborah considered the remarkable sequence of occurrences that led them to this point. What started as a standard shoplifting call had fundamentally altered not only the Thompsons' lives, but potentially the future of maternal-fetal medicine. The hospital administrator had spoken with her earlier that week regarding the possibility of expanding the pilot program into a lasting screening initiative, one that could eventually be mirrored in hospitals nationwide. Max's capabilities, previously viewed as exceptional even within the specialized field of canine units, could potentially lead to a completely novel method for the early detection of pregnancy complications. As they accompanied the family to their vehicle, Deborah noted Max's persistent attentiveness, not the frantic vigilance of that initial meeting, but the content focus of a protector whose responsibility was now secure. Certain bonds defied easy understanding, whether built over years of collaboration or forged in a sudden crisis when intuition trumped formal instruction. As they arrived at the parking area, Emily spoke to Deborah for a final moment. "The doctor informed me yesterday that if we had delayed even 2 more hours, neither Charlotte nor I would have made it. I can never adequately express my gratitude for heeding Max's concerns when everyone else disregarded them." Deborah observed Mark fastening the car seat, Charlotte sleeping soundly inside. "That's what partnership signifies," she stated quietly. "Occasionally, one must have faith, despite not completely comprehending." This feeling resonated as much within her connection with Max as it did regarding the remarkable rapport they had cultivated with the Thompson family. A note that frequently, the most meaningful relationships arise from instances where we choose to listen to intuition over reason, believe instead of question, and connect instead of withdraw. Have you ever observed an animal recognizing something before humans were able to perceive it? The remarkable story of Max and Officer Morgan illustrates that our animal companions often sense threats that are unseen by us. Their heightened senses, especially their remarkable ability to detect anomalies, occasionally alert them to medical conditions, natural disasters, or other threats well before we become aware. Throughout history, accounts have arisen of dogs detecting cancer in their owners, sensing oncoming seizures, or even alerting to significant changes in blood sugar levels. Although scientific research continues to examine these extraordinary capabilities, it remains undeniable that animals occasionally detect things that even advanced medical technology misses. Considering the critical emergency experienced by Emily and Charlotte Thompson, should trained police dogs be utilized more frequently in medical environments? Max's remarkable capability to identify a hidden placental abruption hours prior to standard signs emerging indicates possible, yet unrealized, possibilities for canine teams extending past typical law enforcement duties. With medical detection dogs increasingly utilized for conditions like diabetes and epilepsy, possibly law enforcement canines, through specialized training, could fill essential gaps in healthcare screening. What's the most astonishing animal instinct story you've encountered? You may have observed a pet acting unusually before an earthquake, a service dog alerting to an undetected medical emergency, or another striking example of animal perception that went beyond common understanding. We are interested in hearing about your experiences with these exceptional bonds between humans and animals. If Max and Officer Morgan's story resonated with you, please like and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. These incredible canine stories showcase the remarkable bond between handlers and their four-legged partners, connections that sometimes transcend explanation and occasionally save lives when it matters most. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We share new police canine stories regularly, each highlighting the remarkable abilities of these highly trained animals and the officers who work alongside them. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss a new upload. Watch our previous canine hero stories, which are appearing on your screen now. From drug detection and criminal apprehension to search and rescue operations, these incredible working dogs continue to prove that sometimes the most powerful tools in law enforcement have four paws and an extraordinary nose. We'll see you tomorrow with another brand new video. A service dog barked continuously at a stroller in a busy mall. The mother became angry, security was summoned, and shoppers grew frustrated. But when the blanket was finally removed, what they witnessed moved the entire crowd to tears. Before we begin today's story, please leave a comment below indicating your location. And if you enjoy heartwarming stories about police dogs like this one, remember to subscribe. Prepare for what's about to unfold. The Westfield Shopping Center was filled with the usual weekend shopping activity. Families with strollers filled with bags, teenagers gathered around the food court, and a continuous blend of 1,000 conversations filled the space under the large glass ceiling. Afternoon sunlight shone through the skylights, creating warm areas on the polished tile floors as shoppers moved through the busy walkways between stores. Jessica Winters navigated the Saturday crowd with a practiced and efficient manner, her steps deliberate and measured. Beside her walked Echo, a Belgian Malinois wearing a professional red service vest with medical alert patches. Unlike the hurried shoppers who bumped shoulders and moved around each other, Echo moved with military precision, maintaining a perfect heel position despite the chaos, his attentive brown eyes occasionally glancing up at Jessica's face to check her status. "Excuse me, please," Jessica said as they moved past a group of teenagers who had stopped suddenly to take selfies in front of a clothing display. She kept her right hand lightly on Echo's specialized mobility harness, not because she required the physical support that day, but because the connection helped her feel stable amidst the overwhelming sights and sounds of the mall. The holiday decorations had already been put up, even though Thanksgiving was still 2 weeks away. Large silver and red decorations were suspended from the ceiling, and artificial pine garlands adorned the railings of the second-floor walkways. A faint piano version of Winter Wonderland played from afar, struggling to be heard over the noise of the crowd, the sounds of conversations, squeaking stroller wheels, and periodic announcements from the mall's public address system. Jessica glanced at her watch. It was 2:17 p.m. She had planned this trip carefully, arriving after the lunch rush but before the evening crowd descended. Her mental checklist was almost finished. New running shoes, the birthday gift for her niece, and one more stop at the bookstore to pick up the novel her book club was reading next. Then she could return to the quiet sanctuary of her apartment before the familiar tension in her shoulders escalated into a full-blown anxiety attack. Echo stayed calm and composed, his training clearly visible in his deliberate actions. He didn't behave like typical dogs who might investigate spilled food or react to appealing smells. Instead, he concentrated entirely on Jessica and any possible dangers to her safety. When a young child unexpectedly cried at a store called Toyland, Echo quickly assessed Jessica's response, prepared to offer deep pressure therapy should the noise upset her. Fortunately, this was a positive day. Jessica reacted with a slight flinch, then proceeded walking with a deep breath. The central court of the mall appeared before them, a circular space featuring a decorative fountain and benches for weary shoppers to rest. Jessica guided them toward the quieter path along the perimeter, avoiding the congested group of people observing a weekend product demonstration. Echo modified his speed seamlessly, guiding their path as though he and Jessica functioned as one unit within the crowd, their synchronicity stemming from countless hours of shared experience. Jessica had not always required Echo's presence. 5 years ago, she was Staff Sergeant Jessica Winters, a combat medic with the 4th Infantry Division, recognized for maintaining remarkable composure amidst the most severe mass casualty events. She had treated wounded soldiers under fire, stabilized blast injuries in helicopters, and once performed an emergency airway procedure during a sandstorm with almost zero visibility. Her commanding officers had described her as unshakable. Then occurred the roadside bomb outside Kandahar. Jessica had been the first to respond, treating 3 critically wounded soldiers while awaiting medevac. She had rescued all 3, but the 4th, her closest friend on the deployment, had died despite her desperate efforts. The consequences were stark: traumatic brain injury, shrapnel wounds to her left leg, and the unseen wounds of PTSD that ultimately proved more debilitating than her physical injuries. Returning to civilian life had become a minefield of triggers. Crowds, sudden noises, certain smells that instantly transported her back to the worst moments of her service. She explored therapy, medication, and support groups, but none provided complete relief until the VA's service dog program paired her with Echo 3 years ago. Echo was a unique service dog. This Belgian Malinois had been removed from a military working dog program, not due to a lack of skill, but because of his gentle nature, a characteristic that made him ideally suited for medical alert duties. His specialized training encompassed recognizing the minute biochemical alterations that foreshadow Jessica's panic attacks and seizures, a complication stemming from her TBI that occurred infrequently but posed a significant risk. "He is observing your body chemistry," the trainer had clarified during their placement. "Variations in your respiration, minuscule perspiration, and even alterations in your walk that you won't perceive deliberately. Echo will provide a warning before you are even aware of an issue." Their bond had developed past the boundaries of training. Echo possessed a remarkable skill in evaluating risks in Jessica's surroundings, differentiating between minor anxieties and real threats. He would position his body to shield Jessica from anything potentially triggering, whether approaching strangers or sudden movements, while largely remaining unnoticed during everyday interactions. Above all, Echo had restored Jessica's independence. Prior to this, she had rarely left her apartment, neglecting medical appointments and withdrawing from friends and family. Currently, she volunteers twice weekly at the VA hospital, has restarted her nursing education, and can navigate public spaces like this mall, still challenging but achievable with Echo's consistent support and alerting abilities. Many people didn't realize that beneath Echo's calm professional appearance lay a dog capable of detecting incredibly small chemical shifts, changes undetectable by human senses or medical instruments. His alerts stemmed not only from excellent training, but also from a complex biological detection system combined with steadfast loyalty. Jessica directed Echo towards the central court fountain, intending to cross over to reach the bookstore on the opposite side. As they walked past a row of benches near the fountain, Echo's demeanor shifted, his ears pricked forward, his head lifted slightly higher, and his gait lost its fluid rhythm for a brief moment. Jessica noticed it instantly, having spent 3 years together. Even the slightest changes in Echo's behavior registered like alarm bells. "What is it, buddy?" she murmured, scanning the area for potential triggers. Echo's attention had fixed on something ahead and to their right. Jessica's attention followed his gaze to a navy blue stroller situated next to a bench. A woman, seemingly in her 30s and with dark hair styled in a loose bun, was organizing shopping bags nearby. The baby in the stroller seemed to be sleeping calmly under a thin blanket featuring cartoon elephants. Jessica softly adjusted Echo's harness, trying to get his attention. "Come on, focus." However, instead of following her instruction, Echo's body became even more rigid. A soft whine came from him, a sound Jessica had seldom heard from her well-trained service dog. Echo moved closer to the stroller, abandoning his heel position for the first time in public that Jessica could recall. "Echo, heel," Jessica instructed more sternly, feeling a blush rise on her cheeks as a nearby elderly couple looked in their direction. Service dogs were meant to be unobtrusive in public spaces. That was the expectation. Echo had never deviated from protocol in this way before. The dog obeyed with evident hesitation, returning to her side while still watching the stroller. After 3 more steps, Echo stopped abruptly, firmly placing his feet and declining to budge from the stroller's line of sight. "Is something the matter with your dog?" the mother inquired, observing Echo's focused attention. Her voice carried a trace of irritation as she looked between her shopping bags and the service dog. "I'm sorry," Jessica started, but Echo interrupted her apology with a quick, forceful bark that resonated across the central court. People shopping turned towards the sound, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and disapproval. "Control your dog, please," the mother stated, her annoyance now clear. "You're frightening my baby." However, the baby hadn't moved at the loud bark, a detail that Jessica's training immediately recognized as odd. Typically, sleeping infants would react with a start to such a sound. Echo barked once more, then again, his barks becoming increasingly urgent. It wasn't aggression. Jessica understood Echo's behaviors completely. It was an alert, mirroring the pattern he exhibited when sensing a potential medical crisis. "Ma'am, I believe," Jessica began, but the mother interrupted her. "Service dogs shouldn't bark in public," the woman retorted, rising and moving defensively toward her stroller. "You need to leave." Two mall security guards, both wearing navy blue uniforms, moved towards the disturbance. The taller guard, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, and a name tag identifying him as Wilson, spoke to Jessica. "Ma'am, we've received reports of your dog causing a disturbance for shoppers. Is everything all right?" Echo continued to bark, pulling towards the stroller with unusual focus. Jessica felt as though many people were watching her, judging, and presuming she lacked control over her service dog. The demands to apologize and depart were intense, yet Echo's actions conveyed a contrasting message, one that years of collaboration had shown her to be reliable in interpreting. "My service dog is medically trained," Jessica stated, working to maintain a composed tone. "He is specifically alerting to something concerning regarding that baby. This isn't typical behavior for him." The second security guard, a younger woman with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, approached the mother. "Ma'am, would you please check on your child, just to be cautious?" "This is absurd," the mother protested. "She's fine. Simply taking her afternoon nap. I'm only shopping for less than an hour." Wilson frowned, visibly uneasy with the circumstances. "Ma'am," he addressed Jessica, "service animals are not permitted to be disruptive in public spaces. Mall policy dictates that." "I'm aware of mall policy," Jessica responded, her voice revealing the influence of her military training. Echo wasn't issuing this alert arbitrarily. He was detecting a medically significant issue. Echo had now activated his complete medical alert sequence, sitting stiffly, vocalizing with a characteristic 3 barks, then pawing the ground. This was the same pattern he exhibited when identifying Jessica's rare seizures in advance, a behavior that had prevented serious injury on multiple occasions. "Look," Jessica stated, referencing her medical experience, "I served as a combat medic." Echo is programmed to recognize specific medical crises. There's an issue with that baby, and each moment we spend debating could be critical. Jessica initially encountered Echo on a rainy Tuesday at the Patriot Service Dogs Training Center in Colorado, recently completing intensive therapy and still using a cane for her left leg. She initially doubted a dog could achieve what medication and counseling had not. Instead of the warm welcome Jessica anticipated, Echo approached her cautiously, deliberately sniffing her hands, her legs, and her breath. He then settled directly in front of her, his eyes fixed on her face as if committing every detail to memory. The turning point in their partnership occurred 3 months into their training. Their initial period had presented difficulties. Jessica's fluctuating symptoms required Echo to identify patterns that even medical devices sometimes failed to detect. The team utilized scent samples gathered during Jessica's pre-seizure states, anxiety attacks, and normal days to train Echo to distinguish between them. Subsequently, one evening, while Jessica was having coffee with her roommate, Echo abruptly initiated his alert behavior, remaining rigid, emitting 3 distinct barks, then pawing the ground. Jessica felt well and initially attributed it to a training mistake. "Echo, settle," she commanded. Instead of following instructions, Echo had turned to her roommate, Diane, repeating the alert pattern with increasing urgency. "Maybe he needs to go out?" Diane suggested, rising. She had taken 2 steps when she collapsed to the floor. Paramedics later confirmed she had experienced a dangerous blood sugar crash that could have resulted in a coma if she had been alone. Echo hadn't been alerting for Jessica at all. He recognized Diane's declining glucose levels, a condition she hadn't received a diagnosis for at that time. Following that day, Jessica's faith in Echo became unwavering. Whenever he provided an alert, she responded, irrespective of whether she experienced any symptoms herself. That established history of trust is what provided Jessica with the assurance to maintain her position now. Although met with skeptical looks and the mother's initial hesitation, Echo had gained her confidence through demonstrated dependability, and she was committed to supporting his warning, regardless of any awkwardness. A small group of people had assembled, whispering amongst themselves. An older woman approached. "Perhaps you should examine the baby, dear. It's better to be cautious." The mother's certainty lessened a little as she looked at her child, who remained perfectly still. She claimed to be a deep sleeper, but a note of doubt entered her voice. "Your baby hasn't reacted to any sounds," Jessica remarked gently. Not even a flinch at Echo's barking. That wasn't typical behavior for an infant. The mother's face changed as she processed this. She turned to the stroller, her shoulders showing strain. "Please, please," Jessica said, her voice becoming more gentle. "Echo has never been incorrect about a medical alert. Not in 3 years. My concern for your daughter prompted my request." The security guards looked at each other, appearing uncertain about the appropriate procedure for this uncommon circumstance. Wilson approached the stroller. "Ma'am, may we briefly examine the situation?" he asked. "Then everyone can resume their activities." The mother paused, then agreed, moving towards the stroller. "Very well. I'll demonstrate that she is simply sleeping, and then I anticipate an apology." Jessica remained behind, ensuring Echo stayed calm as the mother bent over the stroller and carefully pulled back the blanket with the elephant design. The woman's annoyed look quickly changed, and color left her face. "Madison," she said, her voice growing louder. When the baby didn't react, she touched her daughter's cheek. "Madison, wake up, baby." The security guard stepped forward instantly as the mother's voice rose to panic. "She's not waking up." Tears streamed down her face as she desperately unfastened the stroller's buckles. "If something's wrong, please help." Wilson quickly radioed for medical help, and his partner assisted the mother in lifting the unresponsive infant from the stroller. The baby's lips were slightly bluish, and while her chest rose with shallow breaths, she didn't respond to her mother's increasingly frantic efforts to rouse her. "I'm a former combat medic," Jessica stated, stepping forward with composure. "Can I assist while we await medical personnel?" The mother nodded vigorously, tears running down her face as Jessica drew near. Echo remained calm, his earlier urgent alerting now replaced by watchful observation. Jessica assessed the baby's vital signs with practiced skill. "She is breathing, but it's shallow. Pulse is detectable but weak." Jessica turned to the mother. "Has Madison been unwell recently? Are there any existing medical concerns?" "No, nothing," the mother responded, stammering. "During her routine checkup last week, everything was perfect. She simply fell asleep while shopping." An older man then approached from the assembled group. "I'm Dr. Brenner, a pediatrician," he stated. "May I examine her?" With the mother's consent, the doctor rapidly assessed the infant. "Pupils are responsive but sluggish," he observed. "Temperature appears normal." He turned to Jessica and spoke softly. "This looks neurological. How long has she been unresponsive?" "I don't know," the mother cried. "She fell asleep approximately 40 minutes ago. She typically sleeps soundly during shopping trips." The movement of the stroller. Her voice faltered as the realization struck her. "Oh God, has she been like this the entire time? I believed she was simply sleeping." Mall medical staff arrived with a first aid kit and oxygen. Shortly after, paramedics navigated the crowd with a gurney and pediatric medical equipment. Service dogs signaled to the baby. Dr. Brenner briefed the paramedics. "The infant is unresponsive, but breathing. Possible neurological event is suspected." As the paramedics commenced their assessment, the lead EMT observed Echo, a Belgian Malinois medical alert dog. These dogs are remarkable scent detectors. Last year, we had one alert to a carbon monoxide victim who exhibited no visible symptoms. "Their olfactory capabilities are extraordinary," Dr. Brenner stated, watching Echo with renewed respect. "Certain studies indicate they can identify molecular changes at concentrations as low as parts per trillion." Finding it is comparable to locating a single drop of blood within 20 Olympic swimming pools. The medical uses are still being explored, especially for illnesses where early diagnosis significantly enhances results. Ramirez nodded as he secured a pulse oximeter to Madison's small finger. He had observed dogs detecting seizures prior to clinical signs, identifying malignancies before scans could, and even forecasting cardiac events. This little one is lucky that you and your partner were present today. Amber Parker, holding her daughter's hand, whispered, "Your dog knew. How could he possibly know when I didn't?" The paramedics responded with practice speed, securing the infant to the pediatric backboard and connecting monitoring devices. Paramedic Ramirez examined the readings, his expression concerned. "Oxygen saturation is lower than I'd like," he observed, placing a small oxygen mask over Madison's face. "These readings indicate potential seizure activity, though without convulsions. We are considering the possibility of absence seizures or a postictal state." "What does that mean? Will she be all right?" Amber asked, holding her daughter's hand. "We need to transfer her to Children's Hospital for a definitive diagnosis," Ramirez stated. "Fortunately, we are identifying this early, preventing potential oxygen deprivation that could cause harm." While a female paramedic was rechecking Madison's vital signs, she paused, moving closer to observe something. "Ms. Parker, has Madison received any medications recently?" the paramedic inquired. "No, none," Amber replied. "She has never taken medication." The paramedic indicated faint markings on the inner side of Madison's elbow. "These appear to be injection sites, but they are very small, the type we sometimes see with specific medical tests." Amber stated, with evident confusion, that the only injection her child had received was for routine vaccinations during the checkup last week. Dr. Brenner examined the marks and frowned. He noted that these were more recent than a week ago and did not align with typical vaccination injections. Echo immediately became alert, focusing intently on the diaper bag hanging from the stroller handle. Jessica recognized this particular behavior. Echo had identified something significant. "Ma'am," Jessica said cautiously, "would you mind if we examined Madison's diaper bag? Echo is signaling something within." Amber agreed promptly. Any prior doubts disappeared. Naturally, anything that could assist. Security Officer Wilson took the bag, and Jessica directed Echo through a methodical scent examination. The dog quickly pinpointed a side pocket, persistently nudging it with his nose, employing the method he uses for identifying substances. Within the pocket, a small medicine bottle was discovered, labeled as infant acetaminophen, though the security seal was broken and the bottle was only half full. "I didn't place that there," Amber stated, her face growing paler. "That's not our brand, and Madison hasn't required any pain medication." Ramirez carefully placed the bottle in an evidence bag. "We'll have this analyzed at the hospital. It's possible it contains another substance or has been altered." The second paramedic spoke with urgency. "Madison's oxygen levels are decreasing. Immediate transport is required." As preparations began to move Madison, Echo whimpered gently and rested his head against Jessica's leg. This was his way of indicating that his task was complete. He had identified the underlying issue well before human observation of the symptoms, potentially averting a significantly more severe outcome. "Your dog is remarkable," Dr. Brenner told Jessica as the paramedics began moving the gurney. "For 30 years, I have worked in pediatrics, and I observed no outward signs of distress in that child. Yet, he recognized the situation instantly." Amber, accompanying the gurney, glanced back at Jessica. "Thank you," she said, tears flowing down her face. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. If you hadn't insisted." She was unable to complete the sentence. "Thank Echo," Jessica responded quietly. "He is the hero here." The Central Court had been converted into a temporary command center. Police officers arrived soon after Madison was transported, establishing a perimeter around the stroller. A bottle from the diaper bag was now considered evidence in what the lead detective described as a possible instance of intentional drugging. Echo remained composed beside Jessica as she provided her statement to Detective Portman, a woman with a serious expression and kind eyes who documented every aspect of Echo's warning actions with considerable interest. According to Portman, The dog identified a problem with the child prior to any outward signs of illness. Jessica corroborated this, confirming that Echo possesses specialized scent detection training for medical emergencies. He is capable of identifying chemical alterations within the body that signify specific medical occurrences. Jessica further stated that Echo specifically indicated the diaper bag after the child received treatment. She explained that he exhibits distinct alert patterns depending on the circumstances. His actions concerning the bag indicate he perceived a substance present, rather than solely a medical issue. Portman added another notation. Ms. Parker stated the baby had a checkup last week. We are investigating who may have accessed the child or her belongings since that time. Wilson arrived accompanied by the mall manager, a tense woman wearing a charcoal suit, who identified herself as Diane Reynolds. Ms. Winters, Reynolds stated, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you and your service dog for your actions today. Our security team will be reviewing our protocols concerning service animal alerts. She looked at Wilson, who appeared suitably concerned. We recognize there are some areas where we need to improve our training. Echo was simply performing his trained tasks, Jessica responded. Wilson added, the hospital contacted us with an update. The baby is showing signs of stabilization. Medical tests were underway, but the doctor mentioned that a further delay in treatment could have had serious consequences, then stopped speaking, leaving the meaning unstated. A young woman who had been shopping in the vicinity approached cautiously. I filmed what occurred using my phone, she stated. I didn't mean to be odd, but my brother is applying to service dog programs, and I wish to demonstrate how they function in public settings. She then asked if the footage would be beneficial to the police. Detective Portman promptly collected the woman's contact details. That could be extremely valuable evidence, thank you. As the crowd gradually dispersed, an elderly man approached Jessica. Young lady, I want you to know I've contacted the local news. People need to hear about this, not just about the unfortunate situation with the baby, but about the incredible work service dogs like yours perform. Jessica experienced a moment of worry regarding potential media coverage, but Echo instinctively leaned against her leg, offering the calming pressure that helped manage her nervous system. She inhaled deeply, concentrating on the most important aspects. Madison was undergoing treatment, an inquiry was in progress, and Echo had performed as he was trained. The police concluded securing the area while Jessica and Echo were readying to depart. Officer Wilson approached them at the mall entrance. He offered a sincere apology to both of us. 20 years in security and I've never seen anything like what your dog did today, he said. If we'd followed protocol and asked you to leave, he shook his head, expressing gratitude for your resolve. As Jessica and Echo walked through the parking lot toward her car, the adrenaline from the incident began to fade, leaving her physically drained but mentally clear. She stopped beside her SUV, kneeling down to bring herself eye level with her partner. You did good, buddy, she whispered, gently stroking Echo's face and neck. Really good. Echo's perceptive eyes stayed focused on hers, his expression reflecting complete satisfaction now that his task was finished. He moved closer, touching his forehead against Jessica's in the familiar gesture they frequently shared following challenging situations. Jessica reflected on how she almost questioned Echo due to societal expectations, the looks, the security personnel, the mother's initial displeasure. Apologizing and leaving would have been simpler, attributing Echo's behavior to a temporary lapse. The pressure of public opinion had nearly eclipsed years of collaboration and mutual trust, but Echo remained unwavering, continuing until someone acknowledged his perspective. His conviction prevented a child from a situation paramedics believed could have been intentional drugging. The realization sent a shiver down Jessica's spine, even under the warmth of the afternoon sun. As Jessica started the engine, a text from her VA counselor appeared on her phone. It referenced the news alert about a service dog saving a baby at Westfield. Could that have been Echo and her? The counselor suggested she call if she needed support following the event. News spread rapidly. By tomorrow, reporters would likely be calling, potentially requesting interviews. Ordinarily, this would cause a surge of anxiety, but surprisingly, it felt different this time. Sharing their experiences might help people recognize the crucial role service dogs play, not only in assisting their handlers, but also in safeguarding the broader community. Echo relaxed into his seat, his alert stance softening into a calm watchfulness, ever prepared but no longer sensing immediate threats. Jessica met his look in the rearview mirror, feeling a wave of thankfulness for this remarkable animal who had profoundly changed her life and now had protected someone else. Believe in your dog. This was the initial instruction in service dog training, the basis for all subsequent commands. Recent events had demonstrated why this belief wasn't merely training protocol, but significant insight. Occasionally, a companion could detect things beyond human perception and human assessment. Occasionally, trust meant the difference between a disaster and a fortunate outcome. Have you ever observed an instance where an animal detected something humans entirely overlooked? What accounts for some animals' remarkable ability to sense medical emergencies even before symptoms are apparent? Would you have believed a service dog's alert regarding a stranger's baby, despite the potential for embarrassment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of heroic service animals. Click the bell icon to receive notifications when we upload new videos each week. Please share this video with friends and family who value the special connection between people and their service animals. Watch our previous stories about canine heroes now, and tune in tomorrow at the same time for another inspiring story you won't want to miss.